folks, this is Rose from In Rose's Garden, and today we're going to make a simple tiara, or circlet, whichever you prefer to call them, using some of the beads from Jessie James Beads Taro Root Ice Cream Mini Mix. And some silver wire. We'll need 16 gauge, 14 gauge, 22 gauge, 20 gauge, and some 24 gauge silver Beadalon German Style Wire. So let's turn down and we'll get started on that. We're going to, I've pulled out all these little purple beads. We're going to use those in our, as accents for our tiara. They came out of this ice cream mini bead mix Taro Root. As you can see, there's a ton left in there. Then we will need 14 gauge Beadalon German Style round wire for our base. This is a new roll because I ran out. Well, I have a piece, but it's about 8 inches. Definitely not big enough. Then we have some 16 gauge, which I hope is enough here. If not, I'll get a new spool out of for the top wire. Then we'll need some 20 gauge to wrap around to hold the 16 and the 14 together. And then I have some 24 for adding these beads. So let's get the wire out and we'll get started. First thing we need, of course, is our 14 gauge wire. Since this is our base, we need to get that. It's going to let us open it. That is, there we go. And we'll need enough of this to go around your head, plus an inch or two for the waves. And you're probably going, waves? What are you talking about, waves? We're going to make little loops in our tiara so that we know what this is. We'll put that in with there. And then we will measure our own head. It's 22 inches. So we need about 22 inches. I think that I use this little lady here to help me construct. And her head is about 19.5 inches. So we're going to cut 22 inches of wire. I know I said extra, but when I put it on her, I want to get it really close to the end, and then we'll use an extender chain. So we want to get the wire out of here. Okay, it doesn't want to come out, so we are going to cut this last little bit off so that it will come out. There we go. This 14 is very thick, and it's not always the easiest to work with, but it's sturdy for our circlets. Once we get the first few wraps out, it's much easier to work with off the spool. Come on, baby. Is it you? Well, I may have to cut one of these plastic rings off. I don't like to. I like to keep so it doesn't spin around, but this one is being very difficult. It's overly tight, I think. There we go. Now we want to get that 20 inches out. This one is very sharp at this end, so we're going to straighten that some. Okay. Okay, let's see how much wire we have out here. And it looks like we have about 18, so we're going to need a little bit more than that. And we're going to go right here. Now this isn't quite 22, it's more like 21, but I think that'll be quite sufficient. So we'll put the rest of the wire away because we won't need any more 14. We're going to now go into getting a piece of 16. I'm just going to cut these off. And I think this might just be just enough. Now you don't have to have as much 16 as 14. You don't have to go all the way to the end with it if you don't wish to. And as you can see, it's just about perfect there. So that's great. So what we're going to do, we need to start making, find the middle of these and start making bows. So to do that, well, we'll just guesstimate the middle's about right here and just start bowing it like with your thumbs. So we got that wonderful little bow right there. And we're going to do the same with the 16. And it's going to come together like this. But it'll probably have a wee bit more bow than that by the time I get it in there. And then we're going to continue down the line making these little bows like this all the way across. So the first thing we're going to do is, if we decided that's about middle, we'll get some of our 20 gauge out and we'll start making a little wrap around the where they come together so that it is got its first bow in place. And then we will continue going down the line until we have them all made and hooked up. So let's get some of our 20 gauge out. And we don't need a ton because we're just going to wrap, like I say, we're just going to wrap connections together here at this point in time. So again, we want to make sure we're close to the middle. See, we've got this bowed, so it's pretty close here. And we're going to do the same with this. And then we're going to bring them together, push them up some, and then we're going to start our wrap. And that's just by putting the wire around where the connection is and wrapping it on there. And pushing them together. And once you have them wrapped, you can trim, or you can wait until you get the other side in place before you finish trimming these off. And I will probably do that, though I am going to trim off this section here so I have it for our other side. So while we're holding this bow in place here, it's going to want to move around because it's our very first one. We'll get our wire out and again wrap this one. Okay, now as you can see, that bow has decided it doesn't want to be that much of a bow, so we're going to have to work on that again. And then we will, and this one just slid out, and they will do that for a little while till you get the next few bows done. I want to tighten that up some. See, it keeps trying to come out of that spot right there where we want it to be. But the next one, we're just going to keep doing this until we get all the way to the end of the wire, or as many of these loops as we want to have on here. And we're going to keep going until we, like I say, until we get to the end. So as we're holding it, let's go ahead and add our wire to hold this in place. And yes, I had to cut another piece of wire, and you will as you go along until you get them all done. Simple, just wrap it around the where they come together. Okay, now we'll trim off excess here so we can use it on the other side. And I just use my fingers to warm the wire and curve it some as I'm making these little bows in our wire. It will work a lot better if you have it warm. So, and we want them to be about the same size, which I just generally eyeball mine, which, you know, I maybe should measure them, but I don't. I just eyeball them. And I'm sure you can hear that my wire is clanking on things over here on the other side. That is one of the problems with working with a long piece of wire. You're going to hit just about everything around you. Okay. So as this goes along, like I say, this one got a little small. Oop, now it's a little big. We just work our wire the way we want it, and then we're going to start bowing it so that it's head shaped. So we're going to come around like this. This one escaped some. Oop, too much. So that when we have it all finished, we have a circle for around your head. So next, bow. Like I say, you can stop after like the 3 if you want to. I generally put in at least 5, 1 for the middle and then 2 side ones. And if I have enough wire, I will probably make a 3rd. And as you can see, I will probably have enough wire to make that 3rd over here on this side. And I actually could make it right now if I wanted to, by just keeping this bow going this direction. And then bringing this one, which is already got this bow, turn it and come this way. And then this one will go down here. And the same will happen on this side. So this one shrunk again. Okay, this one needs to be squished so it stops doing that. This particular tiara is going to be more like a sort of like just a bowed headband until we get it, and then we're just going to add the beads across the top bar when we get this all formed. So let's get out some more of our 20 gauge wire, and we will cut this. I'm going to cut this little piece off right here because it's much more than I need hanging off here. And once we get all the bows put in, we'll get them distanced the way we want them by moving our wires through our wraps, and then we'll take our pliers and we will squish those down. So I've got a couple more pieces of 20 gauge, and we're going to just wrap these 2 spots. And I think I'll just work on one side and then switch to the other side with the other wire. So just wrap these up just like you were doing with the other ones. Now that we have these all done like this, we're going to trim our wires, and then we're going to start forming how we want our loop, how big we want our loops to be. And once we've got that done, we will form it better around the head form and start adding our beads. So let's clip these wires and take our regular pliers and start tucking those in. And then we'll also start, well, we're not going to squish down until we make sure we have our wires where we want them at, for sure. When I'm doing these connections here, I actually try to trim the wire so that it'll go down into the gap right here where the 2 wires are coming together. And that sort of hides it just a little bit. I don't think I have this one cut quite enough. Okay. In we go. Now, if you're wondering why I generally always make these in silver, I had a friend of mine tell me that in, I guess it's pronounced, I'm not sure if it's pronounced cold splay or a little different than that, but she told me that in that, when you're playing these parts, the gold is reserved for the royalty. So you want to be able to get these to as many people as you want to. So hence the silver rather than gold. Not saying that I don't ever make gold. I do make a few gold pieces, but generally it's silver. Last two. And then we're going to adjust and squish. We're at that spot where we need to adjust all of our circles or bows, whichever you want to call them, into the places you want them to be, and then we're going to squish down our connecting wires. So of course the first one you want to work with is going to be your middle one. You got to get that the way you want it. Dip your fingers in there and warm up your wire some to get the bow shape you definitely want. And then keep doing that down the line. Now see, this one is bigger, so we want to move some of this to here, over to the other side here, and then over again to this smaller side over here. So of course once you bow it some, that give it that sort of eye shape, it's going to get a little smaller as far as your interior piece is concerned. So now we have that side pretty good, and we'll go to this side. Okay, so this one here looks to be a little bigger, so I'm going to see if I can coax some of the wire over here to get this one, since this is our middle one, a little bigger, and this one just a teeny bit smaller. Okay, now we'll take our nylon jaw pliers and just squish down on these connections. to the next step. Our next step is to get our head form down here and find the middle of her forehead, which is right here, and just work our circles around our form here. Get them in shape as much as possible. So this one's not quite in the middle. We want that in the middle. That's our middle piece. And then we form two towards the back. Got this more or less formed. We want to make our end pieces here about the same, and it looks like this side is longer than this side, but in a way that's all right. What we're going to do is we're going to take our bell making pliers and get hold of this right here at the end and turn this inwards. So she's like this. We'll do the same with this other one, though we're going to trim it a little bit because I noticed it's got the sharp edge on it. And so it's going to turn so it sits right here beside its buddy, sort of inside. Now we're going to, this side is longer than this side was, so it's probably going to need a little bit of trimming, but let's see what we got here. Now this is the thinner wire here, so we want it to be tucked in, and we want it right there. So it's just a tiny bit longer than I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to guesstimate between the length I want it and then cut that little piece off. And then we'll tuck that back in here. And as you can see, it's now about where I want it. So I'm going to take this other one and just roll it up. Hope I used the bigger loop things rather than the smaller, and I didn't want that, so we'll have to straighten this back out some. Let's see. Now see, we got quite a bit extra here now. Come on, come out. So we want to take about that much off of our other wire, so let's trim that off and then loop it, finish looping it. So now we look approximately the same as the other side, though this needs squished on this side because it's standing up some. And come on, you, right in place. There we go. So there we have our back pieces done. The next step is we're going to get some smaller gauge, the smaller gauge wire out, and we're going to put on the beads. We're going to use this 24 gauge, and we're going to need quite a bit of it. If you end up running out of wire, you can put on more where the connections come together at. But I'm going to get like, oh, probably at least 2 feet out here. we're going to start this by wrapping it right here over the top of the other wraps, right here where at the end. And we'll leave that here. And what you do is just keep your finger on top of that as you wrap the other pieces to keep it from spinning. Now, once we've got the few wraps here to keep it in place, what we're going to do is, oh, this is not looking good. I don't like that. Still got a weird gap there. Okay. Knock my beads all over the place. So we will wrap a couple of times across to this. Then we're going to go into here. And we're going to give about a 1/4 inch between. And then when we get up to the top here, we're going to add in our beads. So the bead pattern I have decided on is just to put in a small purple bead, a small purple one, a spacer, the bigger purple one, a spacer, and then the smaller purple one. Slide that down into place, and now this is going to sit below our frame right here. And I actually need to put in another loop right here to hold it steady before we go on to the beads. So now we'll redo the beads here. So small purple, spacer, large purple, spacer, and small purple. Those go down on here. And I'm going to put them right below the wire here. Then we will bring up come on, wire. And we want it a spar right here so that it stays pretty well in place here. And then we'll go back down. And we'll start with our wraps again. So this bar should have 2 more wraps because it did over here. 1, 2. Some because it wants to not be right where I want it. And I'm not even on camera at all, am I? Anyway, so we want this to go over here and come down around this bar. And then we'll go back up in here again. Now we'll do the same thing to this one that we did to the other with 1, 2, right around the bar, and then we'll put our beads on. Small purple, spacer, larger purple, spacer, small purple. And then when we get this back down to the bar, we bring it into where we want it, and we anchor it with 1 loop. Then we come down, a loop, another loop, this bar. And you can see we're making our pattern here. So now we're going to do the exact same thing on this third bar, which is the last one before our middle one. Now we're at the middle, so we're going to change our pattern up a little bit. And what we're going to use is small, the square, small, square, small, square, small. So we'll get up, and we're not going to go up very far because this one's going to drape more or less through the middle of the middle bar. So we'll go in, go up, do our anchor piece. Now we'll put our beads on. Now this one's going to loop down a bit right into the middle of our middle piece. There's our last piece. Down and on. And actually, that's a little too big. So we're going to take out these last few here. So you can see it wants to go way too far, so we're going to take out these right here. And it's now going to sit here and anchor right here in the middle. And now it needs to come up a little bit because it's not in. There we go. That's the right spot. So we'll anchor this piece right here. That going around. And now we'll do our 2 twists in here. And up and around here. And now we're going to go on to this pattern again with the 3 and the 2. That may be just enough to get down to that other side here, but I don't know that I want to chance it. So we're just going to wrap this tight around here a couple times and trim it off. And squish her in here. And then we'll get just a little bit more wire. We need about, oh, I don't know, maybe another foot, just to be on the safe side. It's probably not quite a foot, but it should be plenty, I hope. So anyway, we want to anchor this here with 2 or 3 wraps. And then we start up our pattern again. And then she anchors down here around this. And now we will cut this extra wire off on this side, tuck it in, and get the other side also, and then tuck it in. And the basic part of it is pretty well done. There's our front part. Now I may just go in and put in another little bit here on the top to give it a little bit more oomph. And then we need to finish off the bottom. I really like the thought of putting a little bit more on this one, so we're going to get out a teeny touch more of our wire. We only need a little because we're just going to put those wires in, those beads in, not a lot. So I've just got a few inches out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some wrapping right here, 2 or 3 wraps, put the beads in, and then do 2 or 3 wraps on the other side as well to hold them in place. So let's I'm going to put the 3 beads on along with the 2 spacers. Now I'm going to just tuck that down there, right inside there, and we're going to wire wrap the other side up as well. So we need at least 3 wraps on this side. And we will push that more to the center, so it looks like so. And since this side is now got a pretty short wire, I'm going to grab it with my chain nose and pull it down tight. Come on, back up here. to get these to stay where I want, I think I'm going to wrap right here. Come on, baby, go through. And go around this wire as well. So it will hold it right there. Let's see if I can do the same with this side. I might not be able to since the wire's pretty short, but we'll give it a try. Oh, we're going to be able to. Good. Grab it, pull it out. Oops, didn't need to go snapping that like that. Okay, now we need to cut our wires off and tuck them in. So, get this baby cut here, and this one cut here, and just tuck those into there. Carefully, because we got them right beside our other beads. Now we want to go along with our fingers and see if we have any sharp edges. And here's one right here. I just felt. Yep, right there. So we need to squish that down in there better. This is where we came in with our new wire. So we need to trim that off. Tuck that one in good. Okay. And there's the middle, and with the side pieces all have these little purple bits here. So now the next and the last stage here is to add our lobster claw and our extender clasp, and that is going to be our final step. So I'll get those out and we'll put them on. This is our lobster claw. It's a swivel one. Then we have 2 jump rings, and this is our extender chain. So now let's get those hooked onto the sides and it will be finished. Now this one's a really simple one. I usually put the middle piece a little bigger and maybe with a point or something on it to give it a little more decoration up there. Okay. Okay, the extender chain is on, and now on this side we will put the lobster claw. And we are finished. And there is our tiara. I think I have it a little tight, so we will loosen this baby up some. Now first let's get the head out and see how much we want to loosen it. Okay. A bit. we'll put that little piece right in the center. Bring her down across the back. See if I need to do any adjusting here. And I will need to make it just a little bit bigger, put it a little bit further down on the extender chain to fit better. But all in all, it looks pretty good. So anyway, here is our finished tiara, circlet, whatever you wish to call it. I actually generally like to have this so it about meets here, and it's got a, and it doesn't, so smaller head. Anyway, there we are. Isn't she pretty? This is Rose from In Rose's Garden, and I hope you enjoyed this. Bye-bye.